In an era when the icy breath of Valheim permeated every corner of the harsh fjords, a legend was born of 6 heroes whose names would soon become symbols of hope and valor. These warriors, known as the Barbarians of Valheim, were forged from steel and an unyielding spirit, each a living story etched into the clang of their blades. Among them stood Ragnar, an unparalleled strategist whose tactical genius and composure earned him renown as an invincible commander. Beside him was Sigurd, whose incredible strength could shatter rocks and whose might struck fear into the hearts of his enemies. And, of course, Astrid, the warrior maiden whose fury in battle rivaled that of an enraged dragon, her shield a steadfast defense for her allies. Their deeds were sung by skalds, and each new day promised even greater glory. Yet these heroes were more than just warriors. They were the embodiment of living legends, each possessing unique and indispensable skills. Freya, a healer with a keen eye, had the gift of restoring life to even those on the brink of death. Hakon, the tracker, read the land like an open book, finding hidden paths and bypassing dangerous traps. And Bjorn, the smith, transformed ordinary iron into deadly weapons worthy of the greatest heroes. United by a common destiny, they became not merely a band, but a symbol of resilience, inspiring entire settlements to fight against the impossible. However, beneath their strength and mastery lay a secret that bound them together, a mystery seemingly guarded by Valheim itself. Their alliance was no accident, and every battle they fought was woven into a complex web of enigmas and objectives. While their names echoed in taverns and their enemies retreated in terror, an unseen force guided them toward a destiny they had yet to realize. But the true trials would begin when the silence of the North was broken and ancient powers awakened. Valheim, a land where days stretched endlessly and nights whispered of ancient gods, was far more than just a place of vast expanses. Its fields held tales of blood and glory, where battles determined the fates of generations. Snow-capped peaks witnessed warriors bravely fighting the elements to defend their homes, and treacherous seas became battlegrounds where long ships clashed like enraged beasts, staining the waters crimson. Valheim was a living arena where only the most worthy could etch their names into the annals of eternity. The battle for Valheim was not limited to swords and shields. It was a struggle of spirit. Amidst the icy wastes, entire clans fought for meager resources, every sliver of land fiercely contested as if it were the last. Even in peaceful times, challenges remained. Ancient spirits dwelled in dark forests, testing those who dared to trespass. Stories were told of warriors who encountered unimaginable monsters, creations from the depths of existence itself. In Valheim, even silence held danger, foreshadowing the coming storm. Walls were erected not only between people, but also against nature itself. Cold, hunger, and darkness formed a deadly alliance, destroying those who underestimated this land. But for those who survived, the reward was incomparable: the respect of their kin, the protection of their lands, and the chance to immortalize their names in sagas that would resonate forever. Valheim gave nothing freely, but for those who dared to defy its perils, the promise was clear: to become part of something greater, something eternal. And yet, in its shadows, untold stories always remained. Valheim had always been an arena of epic battles and immortal sagas, but few names commanded as much reverence as those of the 6 barbarians. The origin of this legendary group was shrouded in a mix of chance and destiny, as if the gods themselves had interwoven their lives to meet at a pivotal moment in history. Each of them hailed from different corners of Valheim, their paths marked by pain, loss, and triumph. Ragnar, the strategist, was born in a coastal village ravaged by raids. From a young age, he had to use his intellect to survive, learning to anticipate his enemies' moves. sharp mind made him a natural leader, capable of turning seemingly hopeless situations into glorious victories. Sigurd, by contrast, grew up in the icy mountains where survival depended on brute strength. It was said that he killed his first bear with his bare hands at the age of 15, a feat that earned him both respect and fear. Astrid, the warrior maiden, came from the plains where she learned to fight to protect her family from constant raiders. Despite her formidable presence on the battlefield, Astrid was known for her unwavering loyalty and compassionate heart. Freya, the healer, descended from a line of women who mastered the secrets of herbs and potions. Though not a traditional warrior, her ability to save lives was as crucial as a sharp sword. Hakon, the tracker, was a loner who found his place in the group by demonstrating an almost supernatural ability to navigate the densest forests. And finally, Bjorn, the smith, whose skill in forging weapons was matched only by his courage on the battlefield. Fate brought the six together during a crisis when foreign invaders stormed the lands of Valheim. The villages of Ragnar, Astrid, and Freya were attacked simultaneously. Alone, they stood no chance against such a powerful foe. It was Ragnar who realized their only hope lay in unity. He gathered those who could fight and organized a masterful ambush that turned the tide of battle. During this clash, Astrid distinguished herself by leading a charge that crushed the enemy's flank, while Freya saved dozens of lives with her healing. Sigurd arrived later, drawn by rumors of a group resisting the invaders. He brought Hakon and Bjorn with him, forming what later became known as the Six Barbarians. The name came not from their savagery, but from their ability to instill fear in their enemies. In one of the Six Barbarians' most memorable battles, they faced an army that outnumbered them 3-1. Ragnar, displaying his strategic genius, devised a daring plan, skillfully using the terrain to his advantage. Hakon, like a shadow, guided a detachment of warriors through an impenetrable thicket to strike from the rear, while Bjorn, armed with his deadly weapons, ensured that every swing of his blade was the last for an enemy. Sigurd, like an unstoppable avalanche, led the charge, clearing a path for his comrades, and Astrid, standing firm, commanded the defense, allowing no enemy to break their formation. Freya, the tireless healer, like a guardian angel, moved across the battlefield, aiding the wounded and bolstering the warriors' morale. When the smoke of battle cleared, silence fell, and only a few survivors spoke with awe of the barbarians who had managed to turn the tide of war. As time passed, the Six Barbarians faced trials that tested not only their martial prowess, but also the strength of their bonds. On one occasion, they had to defend a peaceful village from an attack by Draugr, undead warriors who struck terror into the hearts of the forest dwellers. It was a fierce battle in which each of the barbarians had to confront their deepest fears. Bjorn, who always trusted steel more than magic, faced the unknown for the first time. Freya, in turn, discovered an ancient ritual capable of returning the Draugr to the earth. This battle became a turning point, solidifying their understanding that their strength lay in the diversity of their talents and their boundless mutual trust. However, their lives were not solely confined to war and battles. Moments of peace and creation also played a significant role in shaping their legend. Between battles, they acted as Valheim's protectors, helping to rebuild destroyed villages and training the younger generation in the art of self-defense. Bjorn built a smithy whose fame spread far beyond their lands, attracting warriors from distant corners of the world. Freya shared her knowledge with local healers, and Hakon taught hunters to read nature's signs, revealing the secrets of survival in the wild forest. Ragnar and Astrid, in turn, took on the role of mentors, passing on their experience and strategic skills to the next generation of warriors. These quiet moments showed that their true strength lay not only in their weapons, but also in the long-term impact they had on the lives of those around them. The fame of the 6 barbarians continued to grow, but even in peaceful times, the approach of a new threat was felt. Rumors spread of an impending danger that would test the group like never before. Fate, which had brought them together in their hour of need, was setting the stage for a new story that would be passed down through generations. But it was a saga yet to be told. Brynjolf, the Skull Crusher, was more than just a name whispered in fear around campfires. He was the embodiment of elemental force, a storm in human form. From a young age, he displayed an insatiable thirst for war and destruction. It was said that his first enemy was a giant wolf that terrorized his native village, a beast he overcame with only a blunt axe and a determination that frightened even the most seasoned warriors. This feat marked the beginning of his legend. Brynjolf didn't just protect his people, he forged his reputation with every drop of blood spilled. Over time, the boy who hunted wolves transformed into a general who held entire kingdoms in fear. Brynjolf's armies were renowned for their immense numbers and iron discipline. He led armies so vast that the sound of their footsteps could be heard for miles. But it wasn't just their numbers that made them a formidable force. Brynjolf believed that intellect was as important as a blade. He was a ruthless strategist, capable of besieging entire cities with little effort, using only fear as his weapon. Legends claim that he never lost a battle, and sometimes defeated armies without even engaging, forcing enemies to surrender at the mere sight of his banners on the horizon. His epithet, the Skull Crusher, was not merely symbolic. Stories often told of Brynjolf personally entering battle, crushing enemies' helmets and skulls with his legendary hammer, known as the Dragon's Tooth. This heavy and brutal weapon seemed to reflect the very essence of its wielder, destructive and merciless. There is one story that particularly vividly illustrates the myth of Brynjolf. During the Battle of the Three Fjords, he led an assault against a coalition of 3 warring clans. Despite being outnumbered, Brynjolf divided his forces, executing a risky maneuver that stunned the enemy and allowed him to perfectly outflank them. Ultimately, all 3 leaders fell to his hammer blows, and their skulls were displayed as trophies in his camp. Wherever he went, Brynjolf left a trail of destruction and subjugation, burned villages, ruined walls, and humiliated kings. Such was his legacy, forged with every victory. Even his own soldiers, despite their loyalty, feared him. It was said that the punishment for disobeying an order was so brutal that many preferred death on the battlefield to defiance. But Brynjolf was more than just a general. He was almost a living myth, a man who seemed to embody the fury of an era that refused to fade into the past. And yet, even Brynjolf, with all his strength and strategic genius, seemed to have a higher purpose. He fought not merely for power or wealth, but for something deeper, darker. His men whispered that he was carrying out the orders of an ancient entity he had encountered deep within a dark forest during one of his campaigns. After this event, his thirst for war intensified and his cruelty reached previously unseen levels. What Brynjolf's true purpose was, even his most devoted followers dared not ask. The Skull Crusher, a figure whose name thundered throughout the north, was obsessed with retaining his title as the greatest commander and warrior. His insatiable thirst for new challenges was matched only by the size of the armies he commanded, making him a figure both revered and feared. During an important military council, as his generals leaned over maps, a messenger burst into the hall with news capable of stirring even the most hardened hearts. He reported on a legendary group of 6 warriors from Valheim, whose fame was spreading with incredible speed, like a wildfire driven by the wind. They were called the 6 Barbarians, and rumor attributed to them feats surpassing even the boldest tales of old. Instantly, Brynjolf's interest was captured. He demanded immediate information about these enigmatic fighters, who they were, the secret of their incredible strength, and why their existence had remained unknown until now. The generals, despite their caution, revealed all they knew. Valheim, though remote from major trade routes, was a land where warriors of godlike power were born. The 6 barbarians, in particular, were renowned for their almost supernatural skill in combat. Each possessed unique abilities, and together they represented a force that seemed unstoppable. However, they were shrouded in an aura of mystery. Few had survived encounters with them to tell their stories. To Brynjolf, this sounded like a challenge worthy of his talent. He sought neither riches nor new glory, but the very thought that a group of warriors existed who could shake his reputation was unbearable. His pride flared like a wind-blown flame. And he made his decision. Valheim would be his next target, not for gain or territorial expansion, but to once again prove that no one could compare to the Skull Crusher. Without wasting time, he ordered his spies to begin reconnaissance operations in the vicinity of Valheim. Meanwhile, deep within his mind, the thought of the impending encounter with the legendary barbarians stirred excitement and anticipation, feelings he rarely experienced. Brynjolf was never slow to make decisions. As soon as he gathered enough information about Valheim, he ordered his troops to prepare for the march. A cry echoed throughout his lands. "Gather, we march to war." Warriors from all corners of his vast domain answered the call, forming an army formidable in size, seemingly capable of crushing any resistance. Each unit was meticulously organized: seasoned archers, disciplined spearmen, and battle-hardened swordsmen, all united by one goal: to conquer Valheim and destroy those who dared to stand in their way. The path to Valheim was long and arduous. Brynjolf's army traversed snow-capped mountain ranges, treacherous rivers, and dense forests that seemed to stretch to the horizon. To maintain high morale, Brynjolf always rode at the vanguard, astride his black steed, a beast as formidable as its master. Every halt was an opportunity to assert his authority. His speeches inspired the soldiers, promising them not only glory, but also the realization that they fought under an invincible leader. He tolerated no weakness. The few who dared to complain of fatigue were ruthlessly left behind. And so, after several weeks of continuous marching, the army reached the borders of Valheim. The first signs of resistance appeared even before they reached the main gates. Local inhabitants, aware of Brynjolf's brutal reputation, tried to halt his advance, but were swiftly defeated. Each village that fell under the onslaught of his army served as a warning to the next. When, at last, Valheim itself appeared before the army, surrounded by dense forests and impregnable mountains, Brynjolf was overcome with a premonition of imminent victory. He ordered the siege to begin, encircling the city with his forces. Fortifications were erected, catapults were set up, and the construction of siege towers commenced. Brynjolf understood that taking the city would require patience, but he also knew that Valheim, however strong it might be, could not long withstand the might of his legions. Inside Valheim's fortified walls, the 6 barbarians gathered around a large wooden table with a detailed map of the surrounding area carved upon it. News had reached them of the impending siege and the numerical superiority of Brynjolf's army. The warriors understood that defeating such a formidable foe would require more than brute force. They decided to use their intellect to devise a strategy that would not only stop the Skull Crusher, but also prove Valheim an impregnable fortress. Each of them contributed to the plan, refining every detail as if sharpening an axe blade before battle. The strategy they devised was both bold and risky, a direct yet meticulously coordinated attack, combining the strength of the local inhabitants with the superhuman abilities of the barbarians. They knew Valheim could not match Brynjolf's army in numbers, but they could use the terrain to their advantage. The plan was to lure the enemy army into narrow gorges and valleys where steep slopes would make them vulnerable. Simultaneously, small detachments from Valheim would act as diversions, forcing Brynjolf's soldiers to scatter and lose formation. The barbarians themselves would be the spearhead, leading the most dangerous and decisive assaults, crashing down on the enemy like an unstoppable storm. Preparations for the coming clash began immediately. Local warriors trained diligently, honing defensive skills and studying formations. Fortifications and barricades were hastily erected at key positions, and strategic reserves of provisions and weapons were distributed among the detachments. The 6 renowned barbarians, like smiths, forged their resolve, sharpened their blades, and polished their armor, preparing for the coming trial. For them, this was not just a battle for territory, but a test of their spirit, a demonstration of what it means to be a warrior of Valheim. On the eve of the battle, they rode through the camp, addressing the warriors' hearts with fiery speeches about courage and unwavering faith in victory. As the first rays of the sun painted the horizon, illuminating the valley where the enemy already waited, the barbarians took their positions, ready to commence the operation that would determine the future of their homeland. With the first rays of sun piercing through the mountain peaks, the morning silence was shattered by the roar of Valheim's catapults. Massive stone boulders, like Thor's own hammer, crashed down upon Brynjolf's army. The first ranks of enemy soldiers were crushed and decimated before they could even form up, and chaos erupted in their lines. However, Brynjolf, a battle-hardened commander, remained composed, having anticipated such tactics. With a gesture, he ordered his troops to advance, using heavy shields as protection against the deadly projectiles. For him, this was just another battle, and he was determined to once again live up to his moniker, the Skull Crusher. While the main enemy forces prepared for a frontal assault, the 6 barbarians began executing their part of the plan. Dividing into pairs, they flanked the enemy army with incredible speed and precision. Ragnar and Sigurd, known for their crushing strength, led the attack on the right, carving a path through enemy ranks with their massive axes. Their blades cut through the air, descending upon foes with merciless accuracy. On the other side, Håkon and Freyja skillfully utilized the uneven terrain, setting ambushes for small detachments of Brynjolf's forces, annihilating them before they could react. Astrid and Bjorn, the strategists of the group, coordinated lightning-fast attacks from the center, disorganizing the enemy's front lines with precise strikes and expertly guiding the warriors of Valheim. Soon, the battle devolved into utter chaos. The cries of the wounded, the clang of clashing swords, and the thunder of catapults merged into a single cacophony, creating a scene worthy of legend. At the very heart of this chaos, like a rock, stood Brynjolf, crushing enemies with his enormous hammer, which resembled a dragon's tooth. He was the embodiment of indomitable power, sweeping aside all who dared to stand in his way. However, when his gaze met the 6 barbarians, he realized it was time for the true test. In a booming voice that echoed across the battlefield, he issued a challenge. "Come forth, barbarians of Valheim. Show what you are capable of." The 6 barbarians accepted the challenge without hesitation. They united their forces to confront Brynjolf face to face, surrounding him in a flawless formation. Each knew their place precisely, attacking in unison, exploiting the slightest breach in his defense. But Brynjolf proved to be no easy prey. He counterattacked with incredible force, forcing the barbarians to use not only brute strength but also wit and strategic thinking. Astrid directed the coordination, analyzing the enemy's attack patterns, while Ragnar and Sigurd used their immense strength to parry the most dangerous blows. Håkon, Freyja, and Bjorn seized opportunities to strike Brynjolf's most vulnerable points, gradually wearing him down. The battle seemed to last an eternity, but the barbarians' relentless pressure began to yield results. Brynjolf's army, seeing their leader falter, began to lose morale and retreat. In a decisive moment, Ragnar disarmed Brynjolf, knocking the hammer from his hands, and Astrid delivered a precise blow to his knee, forcing him to collapse to the ground. Håkon, known for his accuracy, used his spear to knock the helmet from the skull crusher's head, revealing the face of a defeated man who had previously considered himself invincible. However, instead of killing him, the barbarians decided that humiliation would be his worst punishment. Brynjolf was bound and cast to the ground before his own soldiers. Having achieved a brilliant victory, the 6 barbarians and the warriors of Valheim stood on the battlefield, triumphant. The ground was strewn with debris and bodies, but the banner of Valheim proudly flew above the battlefield, symbolizing the resilience and unwavering strength of its people. While the defeated Brynjolf lay on the ground, chaos still reigned around him. The Skull Crusher's troops, stunned by the fall of their formidable commander, wavered for a moment, but that moment was enough for the warriors of Valheim. The victory over Brynjolf was to be a clear signal to all invaders this land would never be conquered by force or fear. Ragnar raised Brynjolf's bloody hammer and, swinging it overhead, let out a triumphant cry that echoed through the surroundings. This act of bravery emboldened the warriors of Valheim, who, with renewed vigor, surged forward in attack. It seemed as if the very spirit of their homeland had infused their hearts. At the same time, the 6 barbarians, taking positions on the flanks, coordinated the final assault. Sigurd, possessing outstanding strategic abilities, issued clear and swift commands, ordering small detachments to encircle the most dispersed enemy groups, cutting off their escape routes. The scene was one of controlled chaos. Bjorn, the largest of the barbarians, carved his way forward, crushing enemies with his incredible strength like dry branches in the path of a hurricane. Håkon, in turn, demonstrated the deadly precision of his spear, striking down the remaining leaders of Brynjolf's forces in the very heart of the enemy army. Astrid fought with a fury that seemed almost divine. Her shield was riddled with blows, but she continued to steadfastly repel attacks, creating opportunities for deadly counterattacks. However, the outcome of the battle was not determined solely by brute force and might. Freya and Sigurd, displaying tactical cunning, led a hidden attack, swiftly striking the flanks of the enemy army. This maneuver caught the enemy archers off guard, causing them to panic and attempt to retreat to more advantageous positions. Ragnar, still gripping the defeated general's hammer, raised the weapon as a victorious banner, fearlessly advancing into the heart of Brynjolf's army. His voice, amplified by the fury of battle, boomed that Valheim would never bow to invaders. The unity of Valheim's people grew stronger with each passing moment, emboldened by the sight of their leaders coordinating the assault with impeccable precision. The warriors fought not only for the 6 barbarians, but also for their families, for the sacred lands of their ancestors, and for the bright future of their descendants. At the climax of the battle, when victory seemed imminent, a mortally wounded Brynjolf made a desperate attempt to rise. His willpower was admirable, but before he could raise his weapon one last time, Håkon delivered a crushing, fatal blow. With Brynjolf's fall, the remnants of his army, gripped by panic and demoralized, fled. Some, in terror, ran towards the sea, hoping to escape on ships, while others, throwing down their weapons, begged for mercy. The barbarians, known for their valor but not their bloodlust, showed mercy. They understood that true victory lay not only in annihilating the enemy, but also in the lesson taught. The prisoners were spared, taken with a promise to return to their lands and carry the news of Valheim's impregnability. As the last of Brynjolf's ships disappeared over the horizon, the warriors of Valheim and the 6 barbarians gathered on the blood-soaked battlefield. Exhausted but victorious, the heroes exchanged silent glances. Words were unnecessary, their faces shone with glory, and their bond, forged in the fire of battle, had become stronger than ever. They had defended their land, their people, and their heritage, overcoming an enemy who had seemed invincible. That evening, Valheim plunged into celebrations unlike any it had seen before. Around huge bonfires, songs were sung, mead flowed like a river, and the deeds of the 6 barbarians were immortalized in the sagas of the Skalds. Their legends would live for ages, inspiring new generations. Valheim found peace once more, and its defenders became symbols of courage, strategic genius, and unwavering unity. The 6 barbarians had earned their rest, but who knows what trials the gods had prepared for them in the future.